I am so very thankful that you've decided to join us tonight. Good evening. My name is James Evans, and I'm the founder of Benchmark Adventure Ministries. What a year! 2020 was touted as a year for every one of us to get a clearer vision, a 2020 vision. We stepped into this year focused on the ministry events on the calendar. In January and February, Benchmark led a team building session with site leadership for a corporation who cares for adjudicated youth. And we partnered with 3 United States Army chaplains on 3 different retreats. In March, Benchmark partnered with DCA, serving 8th graders during their winterim. But our time with Donaldson Christian Academy was cut short when they were hit by an EF3 tornado before we began the second of our 2-day session. Their world changed, like many here in Nashville. Later in March, during our 13th annual Appalachian Trail Outreach, a much smaller service team served about half the number of hikers we normally serve in Georgia. Then, we, like you, spent a lot of time planning, unplanning, and replanning. When the best step disappeared, we chose the next best step. Throughout 2020, even in the planning and replanning and unplanning, all I can say is that God has been so very gracious, so very faithful. Tonight is a celebration. There are givers, ministry staff, note card writers who will get to participate in this evening who wouldn't normally be able to attend our annual dinner. And we welcome some new friends too. We hope you clearly will see that God has been kind to Benchmark and gracious to use our staff, volunteers, and givers to be the hands and feet of Jesus. To guide us through this evening, I'd like to introduce Kenneth Knight, who will serve as our host. He has been a Benchmark staff member and board member. He's a Metro public school teacher and recently gained the title Daddy, which is taking up a lot of his discretionary time. Kenneth, thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you, James. It's my honor to host. As you know, I have great memories with Benchmark, dating back to my very first team building session while participating as a student in a leadership conference in high school. Benchmark has a rich history of serving churches, schools, corporations, other nonprofits, and other groups as they arise. And I know that Benchmark will continue to serve groups like these. However, in this season, God has graciously and widely opened the door to partner with U.S. military chaplains to serve the soldiers and the family members they serve. Early last month, we partnered with Chaplain Monty Johnson. Let's learn about Benchmark's Chaplains Partnership Initiative and get Chaplain Johnson's perspective of his very first retreat with Benchmark.
The whole Benchmark model seems to be getting people out into nature and getting people out and doing things that they wouldn't normally be doing. I don't normally start fires. I don't normally learn instinctive shooting.
Benchmark provides, I think, a number of opportunities. One is outdoor adventure, serving a variety of different groups. This weekend we're serving soldiers and their families.
Our focus right now is partnering with chaplains.
Benchmark comes alongside and partners with chaplains to facilitate and make things happen.
It sets up the adventure and sets up the schedule and arranges all the different aspects of meals and much of the programming.
In modern military, right now, everything's constricting. Everything's harder. So we're being asked to do more with less. And a ministry like Benchmark that comes alongside and they can make it happen. They can say, you know what, we'll take care of the back half.
We partner with chaplains who are already ministering to their soldiers, but they may not have the resources to pull off a weekend like this.
My job is to serve soldiers. They see the cross and they, hey, thanks, I got you. But when you're out in a very neutral setting, it's very non-threatening and allows us to build relationships. And building relationships is what we do.
The chaplain just has to come along and enjoy it and do what he likes to do, what he needs to do, what he's felt led to do, and not even worry about where we are, what we're doing, and who's feeding who and all that. So
it's having an impact on soldiers and teenagers and children as these ministry events come available. And it's just been amazing how God has used Benchmark to touch people's lives.
Benchmark's ministry mission is to help me do my job, help me do ministry to soldiers, opening up those connections, opening up that relationship, making that easier for me. That's gold to me.
Since chaplains are being asked to do more with less, it's great to hear that Benchmark comes alongside those who care for as many as 600 soldiers plus their family members. Benchmark is working upstream before a potentially life-altering event, creating an environment where chaplains and their religious affairs staff can develop relationships with their soldiers so that when something happens, those soldiers will know where they can get help for themselves or a fellow soldier. Now that is strategic. This next segment is from a recent father-son retreat produced by Jose Carino, soldier, father, and producer at JC Films. Enjoy. Nice work, Jose, and thank you for allowing us to show your video tonight. Camping, cabins, fire building, instinct shooting, that sounds like a great weekend. With chaplain-led worship and instructional sessions using Benchmark's R3 for resilience, leading participants to take their next best step. Every ministry and nonprofit raises funds, inviting people just like you to join their mission with their time, talent, and treasure. Because Benchmark is a completely mobile adventure ministry, we needed a fundraiser event that's a physical challenge, calling people to an adventure and helping them to see what they are made of. For 26 years, the Chuck Wilson Memorial Backpack for Benchmark has been that effort. I've hiked 4 Chuck Wilsons on some of the most beautiful parts of the Appalachian Trail. Chuck was a Navy sailor with a minister's heart and a mountaineer's zeal, who loved experiencing God through the beauty of creation. With a growing interest in Benchmark ministry, Chuck found himself on a hiking team for our annual backpack, October of 1998. On April 24th of 1999, during his 18th skydiving jump, Chuck's parachute didn't function properly. Chuck Wilson is honored as a friend, a fellow struggler in the Christian faith, who was very honest about who he was and who he was trying to be. Chuck didn't quit on the backpack for Benchmark. It's how he lived all of his life. This year, Crystal Grove came back again for a Chuck Wilson Memorial Backpack for Benchmark. Before the hike, it's about getting physically prepared and raising funds. After the hike, it's about recovering and raising funds. But during the hike, it's about caring for each other, serving each other, and encouraging each other to do something that's hard. It's taking a few days to step out of normal life and into creation, into whatever weather and challenges come our way.
Hi, my name is Crystal Grove. I'm from Greenville, Illinois, and October 2020 was my 3rd Chuck Wilson hike for Benchmark. When I started out in 2016, I really just did it because I knew and loved Chuck Wilson. I loved it, had a great experience, met James and some wonderful people on the hike, and so I was able to come back again in 2018 and then again this year in 2020. This year things took a very different tone for me on the hike. Always before in preparation, James has mentioned to us to embrace the solitude, to use the time in nature for reflection, enjoy the quiet. And so I decided to really focus on that aspect of the hike this year, because it is many, many hours in silence and in solitude and in the great beauty of nature. So I decided this year to devote that time to very focused and specific prayer. In November of 2019, one of my friends lost her husband to cancer. His death came just 3 months after his diagnosis, and he was 43 years old. He left behind his wife, Carrie, and 4 children. So I decided I would devote this hike, this trip, to praying for her and her children and her family. So I wrote her a letter and I told her, I wear my Fitbit when I'm hiking, and it gives me a little vibration every time I pass a half mile. So every time I feel that vibration on my wrist, that's going to be my reminder to pray for you. So each half mile that I took on the trail was devoted to prayer for a different member of their family, and over and over and over again as we walked. And depending on how difficult the climb was at the time, it would be a more eloquent prayer or more of an inexpressible groaning. But that time was well spent in prayer for Carrie as she goes through these difficult months coming up on the 1-year anniversary of her husband's death. So Benchmark this year took on a different tone for me. But it's amazing that it was not only beneficial for my life to connect that physical and spiritual struggle into one, it benefited the soldiers who are going to see the profits from this fundraising go to help them and through this ministry. But it also benefited Carrie, who's never even heard of Benchmark. But those hours that I spent in prayer for her, I have faith are going to touch her life in a powerful way. So I'm thankful for Benchmark and its ministry, and so thankful for the opportunity that I've had to be a part of it.
Crystal has backpacked 127 miles, joining 3 hiking teams, and has raised over $28,000. Givers just like you donate so that Benchmark can continue to say yes to the opportunities God provides. There is a lot more going on during a Chuck Wilson than just backpacking. A venture provides a setting to learn about ourselves, creating memories at a known point that sticks with both the participants and staff. The locations and activities change. The purpose does not. The mission of Benchmark Adventure Ministries is to stimulate significant life change toward wholeness in Christ through interactive experiences and outdoor adventures. That gives us a lot of tools in the toolbox.
My name is Eric Alfson. I'm a chaplain in the U.S. Army, and I've been on active duty for the last 12 years, serving in the 101st Airborne Division, the U.S. Army Ranger School, and the 75th Ranger Regiment. And it has been my absolute privilege and honor over the past decade plus to have developed a very close relationship with Benchmark and James Evans. I can only speak for myself tonight, not for the Army or the Department of Defense, but I personally recommend James and Benchmark to all of my peers and colleagues. When we try to plan training opportunities that will impact soldiers and families, James is the first person I call. No one else offers the reliability or flexibility, creativity, or consistency that Benchmark does. Whether we're backpacking through the Smokies, whitewater rafting down the Ocoee River, rock climbing in Alabama, bringing together dads and kids for adventure and bonding, mountain biking in North Georgia, skiing in North Carolina, camping out on the barrier islands of the Georgia coast, I have watched Benchmark time and time again deliver an incredible environment that engages soldiers and families where they are. And there have been many times where we've thrown wrenches into the plan or a crisis has come up and Benchmark never skips a beat. In fact, they're usually 2 steps ahead of the problem, but the most powerful thing that I can tell you is that Benchmark gets results. Their model for ministry is unique, removing soldiers from their comfort zones, placing them into immersive outdoor environments, and creating training that challenges participants and calls them towards personal and spiritual growth. But another thing that makes Benchmark unique is that they partner with chaplains and unit ministry teams. They are trying to pull people into their ministry. They're supporting the chaplains who live and serve with these soldiers, helping them better care for them. Benchmark's helped me on many occasions fulfill my mission to bring soldiers to God and God to soldiers. And I've seen Benchmark act as a catalyst for life change in hundreds of people. Several years ago, Benchmark put together a trip for a group of about 40 Rangers that I had the privilege to facilitate, and we were sea kayaking the islands of the Georgia coast. And Benchmark brought together multiple vendors, right? Like providing guides and sea kayaks and food and the camping equipment and the permits and the emergency medical gear and every detail you could imagine. It would have taken me hundreds of hours to try to pull off a bad imitation of this incredible work, and all I had to do was show up. And so we spent 3 days paddling, building relationships, hosting discussions and activities, and getting to sit around a campfire on a beach with 40 of my newest, closest friends, sharing conversations about life and relationships, faith, and God's plan for our lives. and it was incredible, right? But that was probably in 2015, and just this last fall I had a guy reach out that was there 5 years ago now, and he is now a pilot in the Army, a chief warrant officer, flying helicopters, but he recalled that event to me and that moment, and he recounted how meaningful that trip was. He recalled in great detail what we discussed. Now, I can't remember what I preached last Sunday, let alone 5 years ago, but that event provided an impression and memories that'll last a lifetime that ultimately helped him discover God's plan for his life. Now, this is a guy that's been paid to drop bombs and blow stuff up and shoot really cool guns, and now he flies helicopters. And he told me this was the best thing I've ever done in the Army. The fact is that nobody can do what Benchmark does. They've got no peer. Again, I'm not speaking for special operations or for the Army. I can only speak for myself. But in my experience, Benchmark Adventure Ministries makes a huge difference. So thank you. Thank you for supporting ministry to soldiers and their families. Thank you for supporting the chaplains who care for them.
Thank you, Eric. It was the 75th Ranger Regiment who tapped Benchmark to be their vendor, specializing in outdoor resilience education. The Rangers led the way, getting single soldiers outside on adventures when others were sitting at home. And they published an article at army.mil. Let us know and we'll send you a link. It's sincerely our privilege to partner with chaplains like Eric Alfson and other unit ministry teams, helping those we serve take the next step toward God's plan for their lives. As a mobile ministry who partners with a mobile population, being served by a chaplain who will stay in one location for at most 3 years, it's difficult to keep track of those we serve. Thank you for sharing the impact an event made in the life of a previous participant. Tonight, we get to spend a few minutes with another past participant, Logan Hormore. In 2012, this young medic was stationed at Fort Benning with the 4th Ranger Training Battalion. He accepted the invitation of Chaplain Dana Michael Kroll and the nudge of his command to participate in an adventure retreat.
Hey, Logan, how are you?
I'm good. Good evening, James. How you doing?
Good evening. It's been 7 years since we've talked face to face. Where have you been?
Everywhere. I've lived all over the U.S. Since I left the military in 2013. So literally every corner, New Hampshire, Washington, now I'm in Arizona.
Wow. So when you're in the military at Fort Benning, you came on a couple of single soldier retreats. Why did you participate in the very first one?
So the very first one, I was kind of had it forced on me by my chain of command because it was a newer project they were doing. And so what had happened is they approached me. They're like, hey, Logan, you want to go on the single soldiers retreat? Because there's not a ton of single soldiers at that unit. Sorry about my eye. And then I was like, no. They're like, well, we're going to pay for it and give you days off. And it's rock climbing. So I was like, fine, I'll go. And I ended up going, and it was a life-changing experience, to say the least.
Tell me how.
My experience with Bible camps and spiritual retreats and such has been very, very, very Bible thumpy. And like, I have a hard time understanding that things because something pushes against me, I'm going to push back. That's just what I do. And the reason why it changed my life so much is I went to a camp where it was great men, godly Christian men trying to help young men find their way. And that's exactly what you and Benchmark did for me. It started me on my righteous path to find God and be a better student for him so I could serve others better.
Wow. Why did you come back for a second one?
Just for that reason, to help out other people and get more people to go, because everybody knew me at the unit. And so if I was like, guys, trust me, it's so much fun. And there is Christian stuff, which is also fun. But it was truly a life-changing experience. So I would be a crazy person to not sign up for a second one and to see my buddy James again.
So after all these years, tell me how those retreats have affected where you are today.
So, like I said, it's a point in my life that was one of the biggest shifts that ever happened. I always said to myself, I was a believer. I always said, "Yeah, I believe in God," like very casual, like, "Oh yeah, I believe in God." But after that trip, it taught me to be a far better student and really studying God's preaching the way that it's supposed to be done, just so I could help, like I said, other young people try to find that guidance and path that leads them to the light to help them realize their blessings that they've been given.
And it seems like that's exactly where you are now.
100%. I've never been happier in my entire life, James. I wake up every morning with a smile. I roll out of bed with my crickety joints, and I thank God I'm still living and 6 feet above the ground, because some days I look back at my life and I think, how did he allow me to survive this long out of some of the things I've done?
Isn't God so gracious to us both?
Completely. I know I still have work to do for him on this earth. I know that much.
I'm sure you do, and so do I.
Yeah.
Logan, it's so good to talk to you this evening. I'm so thankful that you've spent these few minutes with me. Thank you so very much.
It's been an absolute pleasure, James. I love you, brother, and stay in touch, please.
I love you too.
All right, bye now.
God bless you.
Logan, such a hopeful perspective. An invitation to camp, some climbing, and look what a gracious God can do with that. Starting a young man on his righteous path. We can all move from one thing to the next without giving much thought to what we've done. But if we slow down just a little, step out of what's normal for us and step toward what may be hard or uncomfortable, we may be able to set a fresh, new direction. Benchmarks R3 for resilience, responsibility, reflection, refocus, help us do just that. We take responsibility for where we are today. Reflection challenges us to look back to where we've been and how that affects where we are. Refocus is deciding where we want to go. So what about you? The final point in our R3 training is, what's your next best step? In other words, what are you going to do now? The next best step is personal and hopeful and loving.
Benchmark provides a somewhat controlled experience into hard.
Benchmark helps people step out of their normal life and communicate and be involved with each other on a level that they don't even really think about.
A lot of times within the military, people are going and going and going, and the goal of this weekend is to allow them to reconnect and to connect doing things that people don't normally do.
Mission takes priority often, but their time in the military is limited. Their time with family and their faith is what's going to be with them for the rest of their life.
Oftentimes with our op-tempo, with running around, we do a lot of stuff, and sometimes it's hard just to take time to do simple things.
All of these soldiers are in a season of transition in their military career. Certainly, they are in a high-stress area of the military, and it is not for everybody.
Benchmark gives that ability to, whether it's soldiers, whether it's corporate, whether it's youth people, workers, or youth themselves, then they're able to come together and have this experience that they would miss out on just in normal life.
Not many ministries out there that have that unique approach and focus on someone going through a shared experience and helping them understand more about themselves and about God.
The day started very early. We began our teaching session even before we left the parking lot, and then headed to the river, headed downriver. They enjoyed the water, enjoyed the day. They enjoyed the rain. I mean, it just turned loose for a few minutes, and they enjoyed that. That pouring down rain on the river that we experienced on the Red River, that was one of the best parts of the whole day, was when the skies opened up. We didn't know it was going to last 10 minutes or the rest of the day. But that's when everybody was laughing and smiling and cutting up and screaming and hollering and just enjoying the absurdity of it all, I guess. That's what we'll remember. The blue sky days, I think, sometimes get washed into other blue sky days, but it's those hard days that really show us what we're made of.
It can be a stressful situation, like it can be a frustrating event that we're trying to get people to work through a problem or a challenge.
One of the things that we can learn in hard, in difficult places, is to focus on what is the next best step.
The next best step is really the only thing you have control over, because the past is done. The future, you can't really control what happens too far into the future, but you can control the next step.
We learn through the situations of our lives, but if we are not careful, we don't connect the spiritual aspect to that. And what Benchmark does is try to take the outward realities and bring about an inward focus.
These young adults have already been through quite a bit, just in their short military career already. The opportunity to speak into that and to give them some more tools for developing resilience for the next step in their lives was very rewarding.
Think about what Bob LANDHAM said just a moment. He said, the blue sky days, I think, sometimes get washed into other blue sky days. But those hard days, that really shows us what we're made of. So what about you? We want you to join the much larger adventure of following Christ wherever He leads you. Maybe you know you should invest more deeply in another nonprofit, ministry, or civic group. Please follow the leadership of the Holy Spirit and step toward it. Perhaps you would consider taking your next best step with Benchmark by giving or praying or serving with us. For example, did you ever think that writing a note to someone you may never meet could be a ministry? If you have, then you and Elizabeth Hodges are doing good work. She's a National Women's Ministry Director and a mother of a United States Marine. For over 3 years, she has reached out to soldiers and their kids from her dining room table. We hand deliver handwritten notes to soldiers and their children who participate in the Chaplains Partnership Initiative retreats. While not everyone is a backpacker or a climber or adventurer, it takes a variety of skills to make a retreat as effective as it can be.
My name's Elizabeth Hodges. I invest in Benchmark by writing note cards to the soldiers and their children who participate in the weekend retreats. I remember my mother sitting at the dining room table every Monday morning writing missionaries, and her love for letter writing was transferred to me. This is something that I love to do, but I have a vested interest in it because I'm a military mom. My prayer as I write cards is that when a military person receives it, they know that the person who wrote it understands. If I can do this, just maybe it will be an encouragement to these men and women who come back and are struggling. They need encouragement. There are a lot of people who don't appreciate their service. There are a lot of people who look down on them. I always put a verse in each card, but one that I love is, "Come unto me, all ye who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest," because they are weary and burdened. Now, I'm not a hiker, but there are hikers, and they can raise support via the hikes. I am not a backpacker. There are people who love backpacking, and they can be involved that way. There are those who have the skill set of helping on one of these adventure weekends, and they can actually be hands and feet at that time. There are certain things then that we all can do. We can pray, we can give, varying degrees, but we can all give. But then what can we do that become the hands and feet of Jesus? Because this ministry takes many of us being involved. I feel like it's a privilege. It's not a burden to me. There are days I wish I could write more than I do, but I'm very grateful for the privilege to invest in these soldiers and their children. All of us are on a journey, and as Benchmark grows and expands, they need us to grow and expand. And I feel like God gives us all opportunities. He opens doors, but He doesn't push us through those doors. So the question is, am I willing to walk through the door? And then it becomes, "Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth," and then take that next best step.
Elizabeth, we appreciate your careful cursive and that of Katie, Wanda, Ellen, Joan, and Brenda. Each of you allows Benchmark to present a special handwritten gift. As Benchmark grows and expands, we need you to grow and expand with us. Is Benchmark a place where you can be the hands and feet of Jesus to expand your own investment? Is Benchmark a place for you to serve the Lord by serving others?
Benchmark is the kind of thing that I've wanted to be a part of for really all of my adult life.
You know, when you work 9-to-5 job, you don't really see an impact in what you're doing on the world, and Benchmark has given me that outlet.
We're all called to minister to others in some way, and I think Benchmark is just one of those avenues to do that. And so whether the Lord's calling you to Benchmark or something else, you got to get out there and get engaged in and serve Him through serving others. And this is just a way that I've found that you can do that.
The next best step is to, first of all, see what resources you have, what abilities you have, what talents you have that you could offer to Benchmark.
Other people getting involved, whether it's fundraising or giving or staffing an event, then you get to join in that and see the effect that it has on the military, on the soldiers who have committed their lives to something and don't realize what they're sacrificing.
With the military, it's a great example that they're doing more and more and more, and so we're being able to reach more soldiers and do more things. And again, I think there's more doors where we can get our foot in if given the opportunity to do so.
People can help Benchmark by prayer, by helping get an outing together, certainly financially. Those are just some of the ways that Benchmark could be helped.
If helping people face challenges, uncertainties, difficulties, and you want to do that with gifts and interests, experiences that are outside the typical, Benchmark is probably a really good place to look.
So, are you willing to take your next best step? Over the last couple years, I have asked myself that many times as I have been taking steps personally to become a better planner. I have found that planning is essential both personally and professionally. It helps me achieve my goals and allows for more efficient use of my time and resources. It allows me to analyze and study my goals as well as in the way in which I will achieve them. You've heard from several partners about how planning each step has helped them achieve their goals more efficiently with Benchmark. This strategic planning and partnering with chaplains helps Benchmark achieve its mission of significant life change toward wholeness in Christ, even in the midst of a pandemic. Consider your own planning. What is your next best step as it pertains to Benchmark? We all fall likely into two categories. Either you have been a partner with Benchmark or you haven't. Maybe you have been a partner financially, in service, as a promoter, or in prayer. I can't tell you how much we appreciate all that you've done and the change you've made possible. Maybe you have thought about partnering and just haven't taken that step. And maybe you are just now learning about us. Whatever position you find yourself in, there's one thing that we all have in common. We all have a next best step. Maybe your next best step is to partner with Benchmark for the first time. Maybe to partner in more than one way. Maybe it's just to keep doing what you're doing. Plan now for what your next best step will be with Benchmark. Then let us help you take that step. If you received a response card to help you plan for how you will either start, continue, or expand your partnership with Benchmark, please take some time now and plan that next step and fill out your card. If you didn't receive a response card, the website provides links for your response with a big red Start the Conversation button or a big yellow Donate Now button. And let me be the first to thank you for the difference you make possible by taking your next best step with Benchmark.